Like 3 weeks maybe? At least. Oh yeah. Really?
Good morning.
Good morning. Goodness, that's right.
Thank you for coming to this great celebration. This is our 30th anniversary and our 30th induction. My name is Joe Bassano, and I'm the new president of this organization, so you'll have to forgive me if I forget what I'm supposed to do, because I've only watched this ceremony for 27 years. But I realize it's a little different when you're in the seat as opposed to being here at the podium. Checking a few things, is the volume on the speaker okay?
Good.
Good, okay. Yeah, I hope that you had a good opportunity to visit friends during the coffee reception and made some new friends. I also want to thank you for coming, because I know that today, the 3rd of May, there are a lot of competing activities and events. Probably the most important one I've heard is fishing season. But I think given the weather, you've made a good choice. It's nice and warm in here and not quite as cloudy and rainy. I did see, however, before I left my place out along the Tomorrow River, that we had nice weather there. By the time I got here, it was quite cloudy. I think we can hold out for spring a little bit longer, but I heard on the news last night that they expected to arrive sometime in July. So we'll see. I'm ready for the warblers to be back, but I hope they'll be on target for next week or the following week. I've twisted some arms to get a few people here, and one way that I did that, and I think it pays to repeat it, all of us could have gone fishing today in hopes of getting that great big trophy. But I suggested that what better way to celebrate the opening of fishing season than to come to the Conservation Hall of Fame induction and perhaps go over to the Hall of Fame gallery to give thanks to all of those other inductees who have spent much of their life protecting the great fisheries of Wisconsin, as well as the beautiful places for us to recreate in the out-of-doors. So I hope none of you had difficulty making the decision to come today, but I think maybe we should hold this event every year on fishing season, because people can easily remember when that is. Okay, with that, my role as the MC for today and as your host is to try to move the program along, but I also want to take the opportunity to introduce, at least to the new guest, I'd like to introduce the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame, talk a little bit about our mission in our past successes, as well as perhaps a little bit of some future challenges that we might need to look at. And I'm doing that as the new president of the Hall of Fame. Then we will be spending most of the 2 hours that we'll be here in this auditorium actually going through the induction ceremony. As indicated in the program, the procedure for that is typically I'll introduce the speakers. There'll be 3 speakers for each of the inductees, and we'll give the inductees a chance at the end to come back up and to straighten out the record just in case some of their colleagues messed it up. But I'm pretty sure they know the story as well. So that's pretty much what's on track for today. Also, I wanted to, because it is our 30th anniversary, I wanted to recognize our member organizations and our board of directors, our board of governors. So a little bit of those things typically don't happen each year, but I'm going to take time to do that this time. Before we get started, I have a couple special guests I'd like to acknowledge. Clearly, a warm welcome to the inductees and their families and their friends. We also have our Wisconsin State Assembly representative with us today, Katrina Shankland, and she will be presenting a legislative tribute to each of the inductees after the featured speakers, in a sense. Also, it's perhaps a good time to thank at least some notable people who have done lots of work in putting this program together. And I may miss other people and won't take the time to cover everyone. But I'd like to recognize quickly the Century Theater for making this hall available again for the 30th year. A beautiful venue for this kind of event. And I think Liz is helping with us in the sound chamber and other things, so thank you very much, Liz. Smeakley staff do so much to help hold things together. And as most of you know, the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame is located in Smeakley Reserve in the Visitor Center. So I want to again thank Ron Zimmerman, who will be speaking a little bit later, as well as Jim Volkholz, Megan, and other staff from the Smeakley Reserve for all of their work. Realize that they're really the fronts people for this Hall of Fame. It was a great opportunity when one of our inductees made the arrangement 30-some years ago to build this partnership between Smeakley Reserve and the Hall of Fame. And from my perspective, it's been an incredible, beneficial partnership, so thank you for doing that. Lastly, I'd like to recognize some family members. In talking with that same inductee a few days ago, he highlighted that none of us would probably be here, and probably none of the inductees would be here if they didn't have family and spouse that could take over and do the wonderful things that allow us the freedom to play in the outdoors and to make our mark on the conservation story. So I'm going to just start with a very, very favorite one of mine, and that is Lynn Passano, my wife of how many years now? 46 or so?
No.
Yes, been with me for that many years and a few beyond, traveling around the world and raising two wonderful children. And I want to recognize also my daughter, although she could not join us today, because she's working at things she loves. She's an artist, and she had the opportunity, took the opportunity to create the artwork for the plaques that we will see a little bit later today. And she worked with the Nina Museum of Glass and all of the other family members who have done so much. A few introductory comments about the Hall of Fame, and then go into a recognition of our board members and our governors. Some of you know this, but others of you are guests and have never been here before. You probably have received our newsletter, and I would encourage all of you to walk home with a copy or two of our newsletter. This 30th edition, we tried to make it a special compilation of some history, the 30th anniversary kind of celebration. It gave me an opportunity for the first time to write a little column from the president's desk, in a sense. And also there's a little note in here about who I am, so if you're confused about that, you can look at the newsletter. Also would encourage any of you that would want to take an extra program as a souvenir. There should be extras at the table, so pick these kinds of things up at the end. And there's also a copy of a newsletter, that news release that went out some weeks ago. I want to also thank the community of journalists. In fact, we'll be recognizing a premier journalist a little bit later, but we tried to get this event advertised in lots of newspapers, so it has been sent to hundreds of newspapers around the state. And the Gazette did a very fine job of covering it in 3 of their issues, and I have yet to see it, but I heard from Bill that indeed he's featured on the front page of the Stevens Point Journal today. Is that correct? So if you haven't picked up that issue, I would encourage you to do that. Okay, back to some comments about the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is a member organization that was established 30 years ago, 1985, although it took a couple of years before that to get things in place. And it was designed and has done its job to encourage the growth and practice of conservation in Wisconsin and throughout the nation. The Hall of Fame, through its induction activities, recognizes individuals who have contributed significantly to conservation programs, projects, and public understanding in the state of Wisconsin and throughout the nation. The Hall of Fame, as I mentioned already, is located in the Sneaky Reserve, only about a quarter of a mile from here, just a few blocks down to the east. And I would encourage you to stop at the Hall of Fame after the induction if you're not coming to the luncheon, or come back from the luncheon and see that Hall of Fame. It includes a gallery of recognition plaques, which will now come up to 83 when we install the new 3. A really beautiful interpretive exhibit museum displaying the whole story of conservation in Wisconsin. That's some of my good colleagues in interpretation and environmental education put together almost 25 years ago, roughly. And Ron Zimmerman and Michael Gross, who was involved in much of this, deserves much credit for that. This year we do indeed celebrate our 30th anniversary and our 30th induction ceremony. In 1985, we began with the induction of 2 of Wisconsin's favorite sons, John Muir and Alda Leopold. By the end of today's ceremony, we will have a total of 83 men and women who have contributed so much to this conservation ideal. At one point I thought I would eventually put some slides up here, but I've always been so intrigued as I've been involved in the selection process and coming to these ceremonies, that conservation indeed touches all areas of humanity. The inductees come from all walks of life, all professions. Some do this as a profession, others do it as an avocation and almost as a hobby. I've had the good pleasure of knowing quite a few of these people over the years. The story of conservation, I think, is also intriguing. As a teacher, I've always built the story of conservation into most of my classes. Some of my students have often said that I speak so much about John Muir that I'm starting to look like him. I always took that as a compliment, but I never know when it comes to students whether it's a compliment. So anyway, I have always enjoyed the conservation story, and I think the Hall of Fame lives up to that great challenge to share that story with the rest of our citizens. Because I think, why is that important? I think it, again, provides an ideal, and it provides a motivation for us to think about our actions day by day, and maybe encourages us to get outdoors, because I think if we don't spend the time outdoors, we will never develop that conservation ethic. My field is environmental education. Some years ago, I wrote a book called Teaching Kids to Love the Earth with some other colleagues. And I think that's really what the Hall of Fame also has the job of doing, and that is to teach other people to love the earth and to help them understand the importance of conservation. I mentioned the newsletter. I would also encourage you to go to our website for additional information about the Conservation Hall of Fame, as well as our history. It is indeed an honor to serve as the new president. I want to thank the Board of Directors and the Board of Governors who are in attendance today, as well as friends and colleagues. As I've noted earlier, I've had a great interest in the conservation story, springing from interest in the outdoors as a youth, an interest in history, as well as nature conservation. These interests have indeed propelled me through my life and my career and my travels and my recreational activities, as I think it probably has for most of you. It's an honor to serve as the new president of the Conservation Hall of Fame, and I look forward to working with the Board of Directors and the Board of Governors. We also have, this might be a good time to clarify, this is a member organization. We are, in a sense, directed and governed, and we were established by 20 conservation organizations throughout the state. And Bill Horvath and a few of his colleagues recognize that as an approach to harnessing energy. So today I'd like to recognize those 30 organizations. Each of those member organizations selects a representative to serve on our board of directors of the Hall of Fame Foundation. We also have a board of governors, and sometimes it's a little confusing what the role of each is. The board of governors, as Earl Spangenberg oftentimes said, is used to keep us honest in a sense, to provide a checks and balance. So people, the member organizations, their representatives on the board of directors, and the public are invited to submit nominations for induction, people they would like to see inducted eventually. In that selection process, sometimes it takes 5, 10, sometimes 20 years before we believe we have the material and the evidence to say that person really deserves this order, this honor. So the Board of Governors reviews those materials. They make recommendations to the Board of Directors in terms of who they think are worthy of that honor, and then the Board of Directors at their annual meeting in November make the selection. Typically over the last 30 years we get close to 3 inductees each year, bringing us to our 83 this year. So I wanted to clarify a little bit how we operate. I would also bring your attention to the bottom of the insert of the program. It's a small type for those of us that need glasses nowadays. But it indicates how you might submit a nomination for someone to be inducted. You can look at that a little bit more carefully. Clearly we look for someone who has had a strong tie to Wisconsin, someone who has really contributed and made the mark on the field of conservation. They can come from many different avocations and professions, whether they're scientific researchers, practical land managers, artists, journalists, and the list goes on. So look in different circles for people that deserve this award. And most of this is also posted on our website, so I encourage you to do that. 2 other quick comments about our successes. In 30 years, we have grown as an organization from basically an idealistic notion of a few to a highly respected and successful organization. We've inducted over 80 individuals using well-tuned nominating, review, and selection process. We have a beautiful Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame Visitor Center in the Smeakley Reserves Visitor Center. It includes a sunlit gallery housing our recognition plaques, a meeting room, which is free for use and is used by roughly 200 groups each year, and a wonderful interpretive visitor center and museum illustrating the full story of conservation in Wisconsin. Each year, thousands of visitors learn about the Hall of Fame, its inductees, and the conservation story. Will also enjoy the trails and the gift store and other things that are at Smeakley. Again, as I mentioned before, we thank Smeakley for this great beneficial partnership. We are, as an organization, very unique. We are the only Hall of Fame in the United States that focuses on conservation and people who have contributed to it. I highlighted that in the newsletter, in my column. Recognized also that it's very fitting today to recognize 2 other great events that happened this year, previously. One, I think, is a wonderful accomplishment. It is the 50th anniversary of the passage of the 1964 Wilderness Act. When I think of that, I oftentimes remember that even before that act became law in 1958, as a young Boy Scout, I spent 2 wonderful weeks in the Quantico wilderness of Canada on a canoe trip. And since then, Stig Olsen, who is one of our inductees, has been a phenomenal mentor in a way. And we have many people in our Hall of Fame who saw the value of wilderness, including Stig Olsen, John Muir, of course, and Alva Leopold. As a quick segue, as you look at this, you'll realize the conservation story is not simple. Many people think that there's just one school of conservation. But I remember way back in the early 70s in graduate school at Utah State University, meeting a man by the name of Roderick Nash, who wrote Wilderness in the American Mind. Helped me clarify earlier that there are many different schools of conservation, and oftentimes these schools don't agree, even though we all wear the same hat. So as a quick history lesson, we oftentimes look at the exploitation era in which resources were, in a sense, used without much forethought. And then that first school of thought, by Thoreau and by John Muir and a few other people, looking at the deed almost as a spiritual value to protect and to safeguard the spiritual values of outdoors as a place for recreation for our own well-being. And then, of course, there are the utilitarian, as we might call them, utilitarian conservationists who see the wise use slogan of Clifford and say we need to protect these resources because we use them and we depend on them for our sustenance as well as the strength of our communities and societies. And then through time, eventually, and we have a lot of those in the Hall of Fame. And eventually, people started to see the whole ecological picture in a much more complex way. And clearly, we would see Alva Leopold as leading that brigade. And so the new movement, one of the most recent movements, is indeed looking at the ecological sustainability and the ecosystem approach to protecting resources. So as you look at the Hall of Fame, you'll see that there's variations on all of these different themes. And indeed, our inductees today represent a couple of those schools, and most times inductees represent a couple of those schools of thought. Sadly, we have one other commemoration to recognize today. 100 years ago, a bird that gladdened the heart of John Muir, he wrote about it in his book, My Childhood and Youth, and many others. Alva Leopold also wrote about it. The last passenger pigeon flew the skies of this great continent. The newsletter highlights that we will have a commemoration at Claire Machine and Wyalusing, rededicating the plaque that Alva Leopold had to, in a sense, erect and commemorate 50-some years ago. Our challenges and opportunities, while we have great successes, we also have other opportunities.